Well, there is a significant portion of people who strive to stay informed on current events, aware of our history, and regularly read multiple news sources or listen to talk radio to get a complete understanding of the pressing issues of our time. Unfortunately, we're up against a well-funded, ruthless, and massive media machine, which, like an alien parasite in a science fiction film, is dead set on taking over the minds of as many people as possible. As you know, most of the general public have been so dumbed down that they're entertained by almost anything that allows them to turn off their brain and mindlessly sit and stare at the magical moving pictures on their TV, tablet, or smartphone. Millions binge daily on what is the equivalent of junk food for the mind. The fact that Maury Povich has done virtually the same show, conducting DNA tests to find out who the father is of some trailer trash tramp's baby 5 days a week for decades, shows the level of standards the average TV viewer has. You would think that shows like Maury Povich and Jerry Springer would have been a novelty for maybe a season or two, but they have both been on air for over 25 years. We have become a society filled with mindless mass media consuming morons who can't distinguish fantasy and reality anymore. Famed media analyst Neil Postman explains in his historic work, Amusing Ourselves to Death, that the drastic shift took place when Americans began getting their news from television instead of newspapers, magazines, and books. He noted that, quote, under the governance of the printing press, discourse in America was different from what it is now, generally coherent, serious, and rational. But under the governance of television, it has become shriveled and absurd. Even most supposed hard news shows today are primarily just entertainment outlets pretending to report on actual news. This becomes obvious because every time a celebrity dies or an NFL player gets involved in a scandal, it's always the lead story on the evening news on all of the major networks. When Justin Bieber was arrested for DUI, MSNBC interrupted a live interview with a congresswoman who was talking about the National Security Agency illegally spying on Americans to cover the breaking news of Bieber's arrest. This is far from an isolated incident and is instead, sadly, the norm. The same media frenzy occurred when Paris Hilton was arrested for a DUI. CNN and MSNBC aired live footage being shot from helicopters, which followed the police car as it took her to jail. Most news today is just Marxist propaganda or infotainment, entertainment made to look like information. The Learning Channel, now called TLC, went from airing educational programming in the 1980s and 90s to now just showing trashy reality shows like Here Comes Honey Boo Boo and 19 Kids and Counting. The History Channel, which once consisted solely of documentaries about, well, history, slowly changed into a personality-driven reality show network as well. But television is more than just infotainment. It's not really hyperbole to say that television, to a large extent, controls the world. Television introduces new words, dances, styles of dress, behavior, attitudes, and cultural norms which are instantly absorbed and mimicked by tens, if not hundreds of millions. A classic example of how easily large numbers of people can be manipulated by the power of media is when Orson Welles broadcast War of the Worlds on his Mystery Theater radio show in 1938, causing many who listened to panic, thinking it was a news broadcast about an actual alien invasion. The incident is a common case study in mass media classes at universities and is used to demonstrate the amazing power of this magical medium. While many may think that society has evolved from such ignorance in the information age, assuming people would no longer be tricked into believing that a science fiction show is a news broadcast, the fact is that many people are just as gullible, if not more so today, after the Discovery Channel aired a fictional show in 2012 titled Mermaid's Body Found, which appeared to be a documentary about scientists discovering a mermaid body. Social media exploded with tweets and posts about how mermaids are real from people who thought that one was actually discovered, despite a disclaimer at the beginning of the show saying it was fiction, and the cheesy scientists clearly being actors, along with poor quality computer-generated graphics of the mermaid. Countless people actually believed that a mermaid body had been found. Some may argue that these shows are just entertainment, but the deception on these supposed news networks is even worse. Often the same stories are featured on the big three nightly news broadcasts, NBC, CBS, and ABC, when they have no major importance to the country or or any national significance. If a certain incident occurred or a story broke that would obviously be the talk of the town, then we would expect the different networks to all lead with the same story or cover it in some fashion. But the big three networks regularly cover the exact same stories which aren't of any national significance or interest at all. This always happens when the stories serve to reinforce or promote whatever agenda they're trying to push at the time. Out of the thousands of possible important stories that they could cover each night, the pattern of the big three networks continuing to work in concert with each other is just too obvious to deny. And don't get me started on CNN and MSNBC. They are the Jerry Springer and Maury Poviches of cable news. One reason the media circus has spiraled out of control in recent years is the constant pressure to get people's attention. With countless media outlets and social media accounts competing for clicks and retweets, most journalists put being first ahead of being accurate. Carl Bernstein, one of the reporters who was lucky enough to have the Watergate scandal fall into his lap, once remarked that the greatest felony in the news business today is to be behind or to miss a big story. So speed and quantity substitute for thoroughness and quality. Bernstein, who once had integrity and exposed Operation Mockingbird back in the 1970s, has since sold out to CNN, figuring if he couldn't beat the Mockingbirds, he would join them. Back in 1985, long before reality TV, Facebook, or Instagram, media analyst Neil Postman ominously warned that, quote, when a population becomes distracted by trivia, when cultural life is redefined as a perpetual round of entertainments, when serious public conversation becomes a form of baby talk, when, in short, a people become an audience and their public business a vaudeville act, then a nation finds itself at risk, and culture death is a clear possibility. For these reasons and more, it's critically important that we choose to resist the temptation of getting swept away in the sea of meaningless entertainment that's at our fingertips, and instead create and maintain a regular habit of staying educated and informed. While perhaps occasionally snacking on this pop culture, we must avoid at all costs consuming it as our main course, or we will face the same fate as if we had a steady diet of junk food. And we will not just be watching the media circus, we will become a part of it ourselves. If you like my monologues, I'm sure you're going to love my books. So order The True Story of Fake News, or The Liberal Media Industrial Complex, or Hollywood Propaganda, How TV, Movies, and Music Shape Our Culture in paperback from Amazon.com, or download the ebook onto your tablet from any of the major ebook stores. And of course, there's a link to the books in the description below, so click it and head on over to Amazon and check them out.